Roger Godfrey was the only survivor of one of the most brutal massacres perpetrated by Nazi troops during World War II. On June 10, 1944, in the village of Oradour-sur-Glane, France, 643 civilians, including 500 women and children, were locked inside a church, which was then set on fire. The Nazis also shot anyone trying to escape. Roger, who was only 8 years old at the time, managed to flee and hide, becoming the sole survivor of this terrible act of violence. American prisoners of war during the Bataan Death March in 1942 in the Philippines during World War II. Approximately 60,000 to 80,000 Filipino and American prisoners were forced to march over 60 miles under extreme heat, without adequate food or water. This event became one of the most brutal episodes of the Pacific War. A newly liberated prisoner from a Nazi concentration camp is photographed shortly after his release in 1945. His face reveals the horrors and abuses suffered during years of imprisonment under the Nazi regime. The hollow expression and frail physical state are testimonies to the atrocities committed during the Holocaust. In November 1942, during the Continuation War, a Finnish soldier is about to execute a supposed Soviet spy in Rukkajärvi, who surprisingly smiles in the face of imminent death. This event took place in the context of Finland's alliance with Nazi Germany against the Soviet Union, in an effort by Finland to regain territories lost during the Winter War and secure its sovereignty. British schoolchildren during an air raid drill take cover under their desks. During World War II, the civilian population of Great Britain faced the constant threat of bombings by the German Luftwaffe, known as the Blitz. To cope with this reality, schools regularly held air raid drills, training children to protect themselves during bombings. The devastating attack on Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, on December 7, 1941, when Japanese planes bombed the American naval base. In the photo, a massive explosion fills the sky with smoke, while damaged aircraft and chaos on the ground illustrate the intensity of the attack. This event marked the United States' entry into World War II. The image shows a Grumman TBF Avenger on fire after an emergency landing on a U.S. Navy aircraft carrier during World War II. The pilot is quickly exiting the aircraft as the deck crew rushes to help him and contain the fire. These aircraft played a crucial role in naval battles in the Pacific, being widely used in bombing and reconnaissance missions. The image shows the devastation in Hiroshima, Japan, after the first atomic bomb was dropped on August 6, 1945. The scene depicts a city almost completely destroyed, with only a few buildings partially standing and large areas reduced to rubble. The bomb, nicknamed Little Boy, was dropped by the United States during the final days of World War II, resulting in the near-total destruction of the city and the deaths of about 140,000 people. The photo shows Nazi General Anton Dostler, moments before his execution by a firing squad on December 1, 1945, in Italy. Dostler was convicted of war crimes after ordering the execution of 15 American soldiers captured during a mission behind enemy lines. He was tried by a U.S. military tribunal and sentenced to death. The man with his hand inside his coat pocket is Stalin's firstborn son, named Yakov Djugashvili. The photo shows Yakov being captured by Hitler's German troops. The relationship between Stalin and his son was extremely strained, with Stalin even disowning him. Despite their difficult relationship, Stalin tried to rescue his son from the Germans on 2 occasions. However, in 1943, Yakov died in a German concentration camp. Sergeant William Thomas and Private Joseph Jackson of the 969th Field Artillery Battalion of the U.S. Army send Easter eggs to Hitler. The photo of the ballistic shells bearing the message "Happy Easter, Hitler" was taken on March 10, 1945, during the Battle of Remagen. A wounded soldier being transferred from one ship to another on a stretcher, suspended by ropes, in the middle of the Pacific Ocean during World War II. This type of operation was common in naval battles, especially after intense combat where many sailors and soldiers were wounded and needed to be evacuated to hospital ships or locations with better medical facilities. American soldiers are seen advancing through the water toward the shore, disembarking from a landing vehicle under heavy fire from German forces. That day marked the beginning of Operation Overlord, the largest amphibious invasion in history, signaling the start of the liberation of Western Europe from Nazi control. U.S. Air Force bombers fly over Ploiesti, Romania, shortly after an attack on August 1, 1943. This attack was part of Operation Tidal Wave, a daring mission aimed at destroying the region's oil refineries, essential for the German war effort. The operation was one of the riskiest and deadliest of the war, with planes flying at low altitudes under intense anti-aircraft fire. Of the 16 cameramen accompanying this mission, the one who took this photo was the only one to survive. Prisoners in a Nazi concentration camp shortly after their liberation by Allied forces in 1945. The men, visibly emaciated and in a weakened state, are huddled on wooden bunks inside one of the barracks. Many of the prisoners shown in this image are survivors of Buchenwald, one of the largest concentration camps in Germany. The liberation of these camps by the Allies revealed the atrocities committed by the Nazi regime to the world. Coast Guards on the deck of the cutter Spencer watched the explosion of a depth charge that destroyed a Nazi submarine in 1943. The Battle of the Atlantic was one of the most crucial conflicts of World War II, where the primary mission was to protect Allied convoys from the feared German submarines, known as U-boats. These submarines attacked ships transporting essential supplies for the Allied war effort. The destruction of U-boats, as seen here, was vital to ensuring the safety of maritime routes and maintaining the flow of resources between North America and Europe. 3 children sit on rubble in London during the Blitz, a period of intense German bombings on the city between 1940 and 1941 during World War II. The area was devastated by Nazi air raids that destroyed many residential and commercial buildings. An American soldier talking to a woman and her children hiding in a cave during the Battle of Saipan, which occurred from June to July 1944 in the Mariana Islands in the Pacific. The battle was part of the American campaign to capture strategic islands with the aim of advancing toward Japan. Many Japanese civilians, fearing American occupation, sought refuge in caves and other improvised shelters. During D-Day, June 6, 1944, members of an American landing group assist troops whose landing craft was sunk by enemy fire on Omaha Beach near Colleville-sur-Mer, France. American soldiers advancing alongside an M4 Sherman tank as intense smoke fills the sky after a bombing during a battle in Vernburg near the end of World War II. The Sherman tank was widely used by the Allies on several fronts and was essential for ground operations. A defeated German soldier captured by Soviet forces during the Battle of Kursk in mid-1943. This battle, one of the largest in history, marked a decisive turning point on the Eastern Front during World War II. The Battle of Kursk was the last major offensive effort by Nazi Germany in the East, and its crushing defeat at the hands of the Soviets signaled the beginning of the Red Army's continuous advance toward Western Europe. 2 British soldiers surround a German tank during the Battle of El Alamein in the Egyptian desert in 1942. This battle was one of the decisive moments of World War II, where the Allied forces, led by General Bernard Montgomery, managed to halt the Axis advance in North Africa, marking the beginning of the German retreat from the region. The Battle of El Alamein is widely considered a turning point in the North African campaign. The Allied victory thwarted the German plan to control the Suez Canal. A massive explosion hits an American cargo ship off the coast of Sicily during the Allied invasion in July 1943. Operation Husky, as it was called, marked the beginning of the Italian campaign, which resulted in the Axis forces' withdrawal from the country and helped pave the way for the Allied advance into continental Europe. The photo shows the aftermath on Iwo Jima Beach after intense fighting during the Battle of Iwo Jima, fought from February to March 1945. The capture of Iwo Jima was crucial for the United States, as the island served as an advanced base for air attacks on Japan, as well as allowing for rescue operations of pilots shot down during bombings over Japanese territory. In 1943, at Detroit Central Station, 3 fathers hugged their children before heading to Fort Custer, where they would prepare for military service. The war had a significant impact on families, many of whom were separated as the men went off to the front lines. Emotional goodbyes at train stations were frequent scenes, as families bid farewell to their loved ones, uncertain of when or if they would return. Corporal James Gregory, holding an M1 Thompson submachine gun, and Technician Omer Taylor, smoking a cigarette, take cover behind an M4 Sherman tank. Both are part of the 36th Armored Infantry Regiment of the 9th Division of the U.S. First Army. This scene was captured on December 11, 1944 in Geich, near Durin, in North Rhine-Westphalia, Germany during World War II. The Battle of the Bulge, which was unfolding in that region, was one of the last major German offensives. A family walks hand in hand in a public pool, all wearing gas masks. During World War II, these masks were a common preventive measure, especially in urban areas, due to the fear of chemical attacks. Many cities in Europe, in particular, distributed masks to civilians, and emergency preparedness drills were frequent. The USS LSMR-190, a U.S. Navy landing ship, took part in the Okinawa campaign, firing rockets at Tokishishima on March 27, 1945, as part of the preparations for the Allied landings. On May 4, 1945, it was attacked and sunk by 3 Japanese kamikaze planes near Okinawa. A British Lancaster bomber flying over the skies illuminated by anti-aircraft shells during a nighttime bombing raid. This impressive scene demonstrates the high risk and constant danger that pilots faced during missions over Nazi-occupied Europe. The Lancasters played a crucial role in air raids aimed at destabilizing the Axis's infrastructure and military capabilities, despite the heavy anti-aircraft defenses. Firefighters worked tirelessly to contain the flames after a devastating air raid in Manchester during the Blitz in World War II. This relentless bombing, carried out by the German Luftwaffe, aimed to demoralize the British population and destroy its infrastructure. In London in 1944, during World War II, an English soldier rescues young Barbara James from the ruins of her home, destroyed after a series of intense air raids. The scene reflects the horror experienced by the civilian population, especially children, who were often caught in the devastation caused by air raids. This photo shows the USS Arizona sinking in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, after the surprise attack by Japanese forces on December 7, 1941. The battleship was hit by several bombs and torpedoes, resulting in a massive explosion that nearly destroyed it completely, killing more than 1,000 crew members. The attack marked the official entry of the United States into World War II. A British soldier in battle dress kneels in prayer during an intercession service for France, held at Westminster Cathedral in London on June 14, 1940. This service symbolized the solidarity and hope of the Allied forces during the difficult times of the war. The recent German invasion of France and the fall of Paris were heavy blows to the Allies, and moments like this, of prayer and reflection, offered a way to seek strength and comfort. British firefighters battling fires amid the rubble of London during the Blitz. A series of air raids carried out by Nazi Germany against the United Kingdom between 1940 and 1941. The partially destroyed buildings and thick smoke in the background show the extent of the destruction caused by the attacks. After France was liberated at the end of World War II, French citizens who had supported the German invasion in any way were persecuted and had their heads shaved as a symbol of dishonor. About 20,000 French citizens had their heads publicly shaved, most of them women. This photo shows the interior of Adolf Hitler's bunker in Berlin, known as the Führer bunker. This place was used by Hitler during the final months of World War II. In April 1945, as the Soviet army advanced on the city, the bunker became the center of Nazi command. The main event associated with this location was when Adolf Hitler took his own life on April 30, 1945. A German soldier uses a flamethrower in combat, an intimidating and deadly weapon used in operations during World War II. The flamethrower was widely used to attack enemy fortifications, such as bunkers and trenches, with the goal of eliminating entrenched troops or forcing their surrender. American soldiers wounded after landing on D-Day, June 6, 1944, during the invasion of Normandy, France. The men are being treated for their injuries after an intense battle on Omaha Beach, one of the most violent during the operation. D-Day marked the beginning of the liberation of Western Europe from Nazi control, with more than 156,000 Allied troops landing along the coast. A U.S. Grumman F-6F Hellcat fighter spins its propeller on the deck of the USS Yorktown in the Pacific in November 1943. The drastic changes in air temperature and pressure, combined with the rapid movement of the propellers, formed the visible rings around the aircraft, creating an impressive illusion that highlights the power and speed of the machine in action. The F-6F Hellcat was responsible for most of the U.S. Navy's air victories during World War II, shooting down more than 5,000 enemy planes. A Baroque church in Germany used as a temporary storage place for artifacts and treasures looted by the Nazis during World War II. The space, originally dedicated to religious ceremonies, is packed with boxes, fabrics, and documents piled up, representing the many churches and historical buildings used as storage for stolen goods. A group of American soldiers gathers around a piano on Montéglise Street, singing together while they rest. On the right, some of the soldiers display the insignia of the U.S. Army's 2nd Armored Division, which had just arrived in Barenton, Normandy, France. Moments like these of relaxation and camaraderie were common among Allied troops during the liberation of France. The 2nd Armored Division played a vital role in these operations, advancing through Normandy and facing strong German resistance. Women participate in a suspended bar race as part of their physical training. This exercise was part of the rigorous preparation of the Women's Army Auxiliary Corps, Naval, created during World War II to allow women to serve in non-combatant roles. The training included intense physical activities to ensure they were ready for the demands of military service. American actor Clark Gable, serving as an artillery instructor in the U.S. Army Air Forces, handles a weapon aboard an aircraft in 1943, somewhere in England. Gable, famous for his Hollywood role, enlisted after the tragic death of his wife, Carol Lombard, and used his notoriety to motivate and train other soldiers. During his service in Europe, he contributed to the war effort, participating in combat missions and serving as a leader in artillery training. General Dwight D. Eisenhower, Supreme Commander of the Allied forces in Europe, talking with paratroopers of the 101st Airborne Division shortly before D-Day on June 6, 1944. The soldiers, with their faces painted black for camouflage, were about to embark on one of the most important missions of World War II, the airborne assault behind enemy lines in Normandy. 6 U.S. Marines raising the American flag atop Mount Suribachi on Iwo Jima Island on February 23, 1945, during the Battle of Iwo Jima in World War II. The photo, taken by Joe Rosenthal, became a symbol of courage and sacrifice by American soldiers during the Pacific War. The image captures the iconic military parade through the streets of Paris, celebrating the liberation of the city from Nazi control in August 1944. French and Allied military tanks and vehicles parade in front of the Arc de Triomphe, while euphoric crowds fill the sidewalks, cheering the soldiers and holding signs with messages like "Vive de Gaulle," in honor of the leader of the French resistance, Charles de Gaulle. The entrance to the Auschwitz concentration camp in Poland, photographed shortly after its liberation by Soviet troops in January 1945. The gate, bearing the infamous inscription Arbeit macht frei, work sets you free, became a symbol of the Nazi regime's brutality. Auschwitz was the largest extermination camp of World War II, where more than 1 million people, mostly Jews, were murdered. Maria Ivanovna Dolina was a Soviet hero of World War II and one of the conflict's most famous pilots. She served as a bomber pilot in the Soviet Air Force, gaining fame for her courage and skill. Dolina participated in several dangerous missions, often facing heavy enemy anti-aircraft defenses. Over the course of her career, she completed more than 70 combat missions, destroying several enemy positions and significantly contributing to Soviet efforts during the war. U.S. soldiers from the 503rd Parachute Ski Battalion rest in sleeping bags on the snow, exhausted after long days of hiking and skiing through rugged mountainous terrain during intense training exercises. This specialized unit was trained to face harsh winter conditions. A Sudetenland resident raises her arm in a Nazi salute after the region was annexed by Germany as part of the Munich Agreement, Czechoslovakia, 1938. Many people were forced or strongly encouraged to publicly show support for the Nazi regime, even if they did not internally share the ideologies being promoted. The image captures French anti-aircraft fire illuminating the sky during a Nazi attack on Algiers in 1943. The bright lines of shells fired by French defenses attempt to intercept enemy bombers, creating a light show against the night's darkness. This type of attack was part of the intense air war that affected many cities worldwide during World War II. The Imperial Japanese Navy Special Naval Landing Forces, wearing gas masks, prepared to advance among the rubble of Shanghai, China, in August 1937 during the Second Sino-Japanese War. This conflict, which occurred before World War II, is considered by many historians to be part of the events that led to the global conflict. The battle in Shanghai was one of the first to demonstrate the use of modern weaponry and aggressive tactics in urban environments. The image depicts 2 women among the ruins of an asylum in Newbury, England, which used to be their home before it was destroyed by a German bombing. The frequent air raids during this period hit many towns and villages, leaving families homeless and causing great suffering. Captain R.N. Skipper is seen resting after one of the exhausting flight missions. These missions often covered distances of up to 3,000 miles, resulting in only 4 or 5 attacks per month for the soldiers of the B-24 squadrons in the Darwin area. Between missions, soldiers faced a monotonous routine, with official rest scheduled for 3 p.m., although the heat often made it difficult to sleep. The long and challenging missions, followed by waiting, took both a physical and mental toll on the soldiers. The image shows U.S. Navy sailors rescuing a survivor from the waters beside the sinking battleship USS West Virginia after being hit during the Japanese air attack on Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, on December 7, 1941. As the battle continued, rescue teams risked their lives to save comrades amid the chaos of explosions and fires. The image shows an American torpedo gunner operating his machine gun off the coast of New Guinea in July 1943. During World War II, these weapons were crucial for defense against enemy air attacks, especially in strategic regions like the Pacific. The gunner, focused on his position, defended the torpedo bomber from Japanese planes trying to intercept Allied naval operations in the area. During World War II, African-American troops such as the famous Buffalo Soldiers and tank units like the 761st Tank Battalion fought bravely on many battlefronts. Despite segregation and racism, they played a vital role in the Allies' victory and paved the way for future civil rights struggles in the United States. Soviet soldiers advancing during a battle on the Eastern Front of World War II. The soldier holding a rifle, shouting orders, and encouraging his comrades demonstrates the fighting spirit of the Red Army soldiers against the Nazi forces. In the background, another soldier carries a Soviet flag. Members of the 50th CB Battalion bow their heads in prayer during a candle-lit Holy Communion service in a canvas chapel in Tinian, Mariana Islands, in 1944. Christmas, especially meaningful for soldiers far from home, was a time for emotional and spiritual connection, helping maintain faith in difficult times. Approximately 3 of the 7 weeks of U.S. Navy recruits training course at Parris Island are dedicated to rifle range practice. During this period, future Marines learn weapon handling and receive advanced instruction in combat tactics and bayonet practice. Additionally, the recruits perform intense physical exercises with weapons, such as calisthenics, to increase their physical endurance and combat readiness. The photo shows British soldiers inside a damaged cathedral in the city of Caen, Normandy, France, after intense bombing during the Battle of Normandy in 1944. The cathedral's roof is destroyed and the floor is covered in rubble, but the altar remains largely intact. Soldiers from the 28th Maori Battalion, a New Zealand unit performing the traditional haka, a Maori ceremonial dance, during training in the desert during World War II. The haka, known for its intense expressions and vigorous movements, was used by soldiers to invoke courage and intimidate their opponents before battles. A man walks toward the mountains in the background at the Manzanar internment camp, located in California, in 1943. This camp was one of many where Japanese and Japanese-American citizens were held during World War II, following Executive Order 9066 by the U.S. government under the pretext of national security. Citizens of Leningrad, Soviet Union, evacuate their destroyed homes after intense German bombings on December 10, 1942. This period occurred during the brutal siege of Leningrad, one of the longest and most devastating in history. For nearly 900 days, the city's inhabitants endured a blockade that caused mass starvation and widespread destruction. But despite this, they did not surrender. 2 bomber crew members, Sergeant J. Dickinson of Canada and Sergeant F. Gilks of Trinidad, share a joke while waiting to board their aircraft for a raid on Hamburg in 1943. Humor was a way to relieve tension before missions, which were often extremely dangerous. The bomber crews faced high risks, but their role in the air campaign against Germany was essential. Jewish children on their way to Palestine after being liberated from the Buchenwald concentration camp on June 5, 1945. After the end of World War II, many Jewish survivors had nowhere to return to, as their homes and communities had been destroyed. The creation of the State of Israel in 1948 provided many with a new homeland where they could rebuild their lives after the trauma of the Holocaust. U.S. Second Lieutenant William Robertson and Soviet Lieutenant Alexander Silvashko in front of a sign symbolizing the historic meeting of the Russian and American armies near Torgau, Germany on April 25, 1945. This event, known as the Elba meeting, symbolized the union of Soviet and American forces in the final stages of World War II, signaling the approaching end of the conflict in Europe. Joseph Stalin, Franklin D. Roosevelt, and Winston Churchill are seated together during the Tehran Conference in Iran in November 1943. This historic meeting marked the first time these 3 Allied leaders gathered during World War II to plan the defeat of the Axis powers and discuss post-war plans. Field Marshal Wilhelm Keitel signs the unconditional surrender of the German army at the Soviet headquarters in Karlshorst, Berlin, on May 8, 1945. This act officially marked the end of World War II in Europe, known as Victory in Europe Day. Under Keitel's command, the surrender ended 6 years of devastating conflict, with Nazi Germany acknowledging its total defeat at the hands of the Allies. Japanese Foreign Minister Mamoru Shigemitsu signs the Instrument of Surrender on behalf of the Japanese government aboard the USS Missouri on September 2, 1945, as U.S. Army Lieutenant General Richard K. Sutherland observes from the opposite side of the table. This solemn event marked the official end of World War II, with the signing of the document that sealed Japan's unconditional surrender to the Allied forces. A group of Allied prisoners of war celebrating their liberation after the end of World War II in 1945. The prisoners are waving flags from the United States, Great Britain, and the Netherlands. A Japanese plane being hit and crashing in flames during the Battle of the Coral Sea in May 1942 in the Pacific. This battle was the first in naval history where enemy ships did not directly sight each other, being fought entirely by aircraft launched from aircraft carriers. The Battle of the Coral Sea was a decisive confrontation that marked a turning point in the Pacific War, limiting Japanese expansion. In the photo, children witnessed the bombing by the Luftwaffe, the Nazi Air Force. The population endured over 2 years of German siege, facing intense bombings, hunger, and epidemics.